Um, okay, so let's go to the listening subtest. And after this, I would expect you to answer listening tests from the materials that I shared with you. And I hope that after today, you'll be able to apply some tips and strategies on how to answer the listening subtest. But first of all, let's try to learn the format or the structure of the listening test. So the listening subtest, as you may already know, takes about 30 minutes. You have approximately 20 minutes to listen to the audio. And if you're taking the paper-based test, you'll be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers onto your answer sheet. Now, let me remind you that the way you take the listening test is actually for the first 20 minutes, what you have to do is just to listen actively, which means that you have to understand what you are listening to. And then you can also write down notes on the questionnaire. So you're not supposed to be writing on the answer sheet yet. You will start to transfer your answers after you have listened to the audio. It's a big mistake when it's one of the biggest mistakes that students do when they try to transfer answers right away onto the answer sheet while listening. So that's a big no-no. So don't do that. Who among you have done that during the assessments? May I know? Because you guys, for your group actually, some of you have gotten very low scores in listening. So I was thinking that you were doing it wrong, okay? Because basing on your level of proficiency, you are not a band 4 or a band 5. You are all about a band 6 or higher, okay? Which means that after today's lecture, I'll be expecting more from you guys, okay? So let's go to the structure of the
Oh,
test.
okay.
There are 4 sections in the test, and you will hear the tape only once. There's also a total of 40 questions. You have to understand that the listening passages become more difficult as you progress through the test. Section 1 is based on social or life situations. For example, travel arrangements, visiting a new city, or making arrangements to go out. This is usually a conversation between at least 2 speakers. All right? Section 2 is also based on social or life situations, but in this case, it'll be about, for instance, a news broadcast, a description of college facilities, okay, things like that. And the difference of Section 2 from Section 1 is that in Section 2, usually the passage is with only one person speaking. Section 3, on the other hand, is usually based on education and training, the same with Section 4. For Section 3, some examples are a group of students planning a project, a tutor and a student discussing career options. So you will hear maybe 3 to 4 speakers talking to each other. While in Section 4, usually you will hear a lecture or a talk of general academic interest. So it's a monologue. Remember, in the listening test, spelling and grammar are very important. Okay, so how do you answer the listening test? How do you transfer your answers? First of all, you need to consider the legibility of your penmanship. Okay. This is one of the reasons that I ask my students to take a picture of their answer sheet because I take a look at the penmanship. So some students may have actually gotten the correct answer, but the way they wrote the letters, the individual letters, okay, is not legible. So there's a tendency that the answer may be marked wrong. So if you think that you have bad penmanship, I would suggest that you start practicing how to write correctly. Okay? Now, you write your answers on the question paper as you do the listening subtest. And when it is completed, You have 10 minutes to transfer them carefully onto the answer sheet. However, if you're taking the computer-delivered test, you are not given a 10-minute transfer time, but you answer, you drag questions, or you click on answers in the computer-delivered test per section or per section of the listening test. Now, if you'd like to try the listening test online, I have a lecture on that. It's included in the first folder, IELTS overview copy. Okay, saved in Google Drive. Just look for the file called computer-based test. Okay, and you will find there a link wherein you'll be able to try the listening subtest online. Okay. Now, of course, there is a conversion table for the listening test, and in general, you would have to get a score of 30 or higher in the listening test, 30 over 40, which means 30 is about 7 to, well, usually 7, band 7. But the conversion table, I have to inform you that this is depending on the difficulty of the listening test. So sometimes if the creators of the test feel that the test is a lot easier, then they might require you to get 31 or 32. So the safest way to prepare for, to make sure that you're ready to take the IELTS is that you should be getting 31 or 32 in our listening practice test. Okay, so that will be our aim, 31, 32, every time you take a test. Now let's go to listening test hints. Kindly scroll down the file. So I'll be reading to you some of the tips and strategies and techniques for the listening test. Number 1 is be ready to listen. Listen for details such as who, what, where, when, and why. Also learn to predict in the IELTS test. So you'll be encountering questions such as matching tasks, multiple choice tasks, short answer question tasks, true, false, not given, or yes, no, not given questions, sentence completion tasks, chart table completion tasks, gap fill, and diagram labeling. If you want to know more about how to approach the individual tasks, we have another file in Google Drive. It's called the Listening Manual. So make sure to read through that file later on. In the listening test, you use 4 skills at once. It is not surprising that candidates often find this the most demanding of the 4 tests. But in my experience and for your target scores, probably the most demanding would be writing, okay? As you are required a grade of 6.5. Now, in the listening test, make sure to read the instructions and the questions. Listen for general information. Listen for specific information. And don't forget to write the answers as you listen for the answers to the questions that follow. So in other words, you have to take down notes and you have to make your note-taking effective so that later, during the 10-minute transfer time, you can always go back to your notes and decide what is the answer for a specific question. Also make word associations. Think about the words that you expect to hear, and this is what we call the skill of prediction. Okay, now on slide 11, we have a reminder here that says, the secret to increasing your listening skills is to better predict what you might hear. Okay, third tip, work out the word variables. Listen for a general understanding of the situation and at the same time for the specific keywords or phrases. So when you hear something, take note of them okay, as fast as you can. And your penmanship in the notes don't have to be legible, okay, because IELTS understands that you're trying to take down notes as fast as you can. So it doesn't have to be legible, but when you transfer answers onto your answer sheets, that's the time that you have to write legibly. Number 4, the answers are often stressed and repeated. So when you hear words that are repeated or stressed, then make sure to take note of them. Number 5, know when to move on to the next question. Do not get left behind. Okay. Number 6, look at other questions for the answer. So don't forget to look at questions before and after an item that you think you are answering. Number 7, listen for the speaker changing his or her mind. Most likely, when a speaker changes his mind or her mind, the answer is next. So make sure to take note of that. Number 8, use shorthand for speedy writing. Now, I have been emphasizing note-taking to you, and speedy writing entails that you also use symbols, okay? Symbols or abbreviations, okay, just so you are not left behind. Number 9, practice for listening gap fills. Listening gap fills entail that these are information concerning a particular topic or event. Also practice for short answer questions. Short answer questions, you have to specify the topic. And for short answer questions, you might also be required to sum up. Later, we'll discuss them in detail. Number 13, practice for multiple choice tests. The choices for answers to a multiple choice question are either directly or indirectly supported, or directly or indirectly contradicted, or not mentioned at all. For number 14, multiple choice, consider all the choices. Okay, because some options or some choices may be very similar to each other or may contain keywords. So make sure that before you decide on an answer, that you have thought about each option very carefully. Also consider the length of the choices in multiple choice. And then finally, practice for true, false, not given questions, or yes, no, not given questions. Now on the last slide, slide 16, these are links that I placed there for improving your listening skills. It actually depends on what you need, but I would suggest that you check all of them. For lectures on IELTS, I highly recommend IELTSadvantage.com. Okay, but for developing your listening skills and getting yourself familiar with different accents, I would recommend abc.net, edted, TED.com, British Council, and so on. Australia, abcaustralia.net, okay, is also one of my favorite websites for developing listening skills, so be sure to check on that. Any questions, guys? Okay. If you don't have any questions, kindly open a second file, Listening Manual. All right. Are you ready, guys? So the listening manual also starts with the test overview, which we have already discussed. Okay, it has a discussion on each section, sections 1 to 4. But more specifically, this file discusses or has lessons on each type of the listening test. Lesson 1 is a discussion on multiple choice questions. So you will find here tips. This part shows you how to approach this type of question and highlight some aspects that you should be aware of. Now, in this type of question, you're usually given 3 choices of answers. It's also commonly found in parts 2, 3, and 4 of the listening test. So what are the difficulties with the IELTS listening multiple choice questions? Let's discuss hearing all words. So in this type of question, it's very likely that you will hear all the words that you are given in each choice. 2 will obviously not be referring to the answer. So you need to listen very carefully to make sure you're getting the correct one. Now also take note of similar choices. Another problem is that you may be given very similar choices. For example, all the choices may refer to years, so it's easy to choose the wrong one. Also, the information you hear about each choice may be quite familiar or similar. Also, listen for paraphrases and synonyms. Sentences and words that you hear in the listening will also be changed in the actual listening script. So the test will be quite easy if you could hear exactly what you see in the question, but it will be changed in some way. Also take note of differences in order. The person you hear speaking may not necessarily give you the information or choices in the same order as the question you see on the paper. Now, here are some examples of the listening multiple choice type of question. And these examples are actually found in actual test questions. Okay, for example, number 1, PS Camping has been organizing holidays for. So you have 3 options: 15 years, 20 years, and 25 years. And the text goes, "Thank you for coming to my talk this evening. It's nice to see so many people in the audience. For those of you who don't know very much about PS Camping, let me start by giving you some background information about the company. The company started 25 years ago. It actually started as a retail chain selling camping equipment, and then 20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays. The company grew rapidly and has been providing holidays in continental Europe for the last 15 years. So if you notice, all the numbers in the options were mentioned: 15, 20, and 25 years. But so there are similarities in the choices. Okay, but the question stem has been paraphrased. Nowhere does it say organizing holidays. Instead, you can see phrases like began offering holidays and providing holidays. So this can be particularly confusing because you have to understand which one fits the question. The possible answers are in a different order to the audio. You hear 25 first and 15 last. So what's the answer for this? The answer is letter C, 25 years. Okay? So how do you answer multiple choice tests? The first thing you need to do is look through the questions. You have 30 seconds to do this before you hear the audio. So it's one error of students that when they hear the audio say that they have 30 seconds to analyze the question, or the questions, okay, some students would wait until the audio starts playing again. So that's wrong. When you're told to, when the instruction says, look at the questions and analyze, that's what you should do. Maximize the time given to you. Underline keywords in the question stems and look at the choices so you know what to listen out for. So in this first one, you may underline organized holidays. Okay. You should focus on the question stem, but also look at the choices and note that you are listening out for years. In this case, this sentence should tell you that got you have got to the section of the listening where the answer will be. The company started 25 years ago. It actually started as a retail chain selling camping equipment. And then 25 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK, etc. So when you hear this, make sure you're looking carefully at the question and the choices and listening extremely carefully. Okay. You need to listen carefully for what is said about each year so that you can identify the right answer. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. It says here that the answer is B. You could easily end up thinking it is A or C if you're not listening carefully enough. Why B? So there's an explanation here. 20 years. 20 years ago, it bought a small number of campsites in the UK and began offering camping holidays. Okay, so that's, I'm sorry for missing this out. Okay, but letter B is the answer. The company,
Hello,
though,
Anna.
yes,
Hello, Anna. I have a question. The
yes,
multiple task questions. When it gets to a multiple task, I think the problem I've been facing is that uh, they put the question the answers the five phrases. So when you look through the multiple choice questions, like you might even find two or three two answers that almost look the same. So I think
mm-hmm.
that's the problem I normally encounter when I'm doing the listening test. I think it's one part that I lose marks.
I'm losing you. Is this Jones? Jones, are you the one talking?
No,
You're
it's
breaking
in
it.
Sia. In
Oh,
Sia.
NCM. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What's your question
The,
again? I'm
when it,
sorry, I lost you.
yeah, I said the multiple choice questions. I think the problem that I face is that they paraphrase the answers before they even. Hello.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
Yeah, the paraphrasing of the multiple choice questions. That's where I find most difficult.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Okay. So I would suggest, Ansia, that you focus on answering multiple choice questions. Now, the Cambridge books I shared to you have a transcript at the end of the book. So if you want to understand the answers to the listening test, you will find the answer keys as well as the transcript at the end of each book, which we will do as I require you to answer listening tests after this lecture. Okay?
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. So don't forget to look at the end of each book for the transcript as well as the answer key, because I'll be asking you to check your own answers for both listening and
Yes.
reading. Okay. Just that way, that's how you learn why
Okay.
your answer is
Okay.
wrong, why you got it correct,
Okay.
and so on. Okay, but
Okay.
if ever
Okay.
you don't understand the answer key as well as the transcript, then we can discuss it in class. Okay? All right. Now, you can see how the question tries to trick you. Okay, it distracts you from the correct answer, as I was distracted earlier, okay, by giving other statements that are quite similar to the correct answer. The answer is B, but you could easily end up thinking it is A or C if you're not listening carefully enough. All right. So thank you for sharing to us your experience. And yeah, It's actually not just you. Many students find the multiple choice type of test confusing. Okay. So this is the reason why your notes are very important. So that later, if you need more time to analyze a question, all you have to do is refer to your notes. So you have to take note of what you hear. Like for me, when I take the listening test, at first, okay, I have to tell you my story about IELTS. The first time I took the IELTS, I was just like you guys. I didn't have any background on IELTS. I took it, okay, I paid 8,640 pesos in the Philippines, and I got 6.5 in listening. Okay, why? Why did I get 6.5? Number one, I wasn't prepared. I didn't study for IELTS. Okay, I was shocked that I found that the listening test was too fast for me, and I was lost. I was left behind. I wasn't able to catch up. I also made I did my notes were poor. Okay, they weren't effective. And so after that test, I took the test 5 times. And the fourth that so after the first test, I tried learning the IELTS test. I practiced, and when I felt that I was confident that there's a big chance for me to get an 8 or higher. So I took the test again, but this time it was paid for by my company. Okay, I didn't pay for the second to the fifth test. They were free for me. I found out that the more efficient my notes were, the higher my scores become. My highest, of course, was 9, but usually my scores would be ranging from 8 to 8.5. I would usually have one to three mistakes in the listening test. For me, my difficulties in IELTS are listening and speaking because I don't have an American accent. Okay, I think I don't have the native speaker's accent, so maybe that's one factor. All right, and I don't speak as fast as other speakers, so I do admit that I also have my own faults in IELTS. But that's of course a performance in the IELTS test is of course different from one's ability to teach IELTS. So what I do with IELTS is I share my experience with my students and hope that you will learn from my experience and apply them to yours. Okay, let's go to, so there are other examples. Example number 2, the company has most camping sites in letter A, France, B, Italy, C, Switzerland. Okay, and then you have a text there in the gray box. The first sentence in red flags up that you have got to question 2 as does the fact that after this they start talking about countries. You'll see again that all the countries or choices are mentioned, meaning you have to listen very carefully to the information about each country. You should be able to identify that A is the correct answer and that a paraphrase of most sites is used, majority of sites. All right. So later, apply this, listen for paraphrases. Okay. Any questions on multiple choice? If there are none, let's go to lesson 2, IELTS listening distractors. So earlier, distractors were mentioned in the discussion of multiple choice tests. In lesson 1, that was discussed. Now, this was when you do multiple choice type questions and you hear all of the possible choices, but only one is correct. So in lesson 2, we look at another form of distractor, which is very common in part 1 of the IELTS listening test. This is when you hear a speaker correct himself or herself, or the other speaker will correct them. Basically, the speaker will give you a piece of information, and you will think that that is the right answer. But the speaker will then correct what they have said or what he or she has said. And the new corrected piece of information will in fact be the right answer. Let's take a look at the example, example 1. So the question is distance blank miles. So when you see miles, what are you expecting? So you are going to predict. When I see the word miles and then a blank before it, then probably I am looking for a number, okay? Or maybe distance, something to do with distance. So the man goes, hello, this is land transport information at Toronto Airport. How may I help you? And then the woman goes, oh, good morning. I'm flying to Toronto Airport next week, and I need to get to a town called Milton. Could you tell me how I can get there? Then the man says, Milton, did you say? Let me think. I think that's about 150 miles southwest of here. So as you see, the man mentions 150 miles. So take note of that. But listen, he also says, in fact, it's 147 miles to be exact. So in your notes, make sure to also write 147 miles exact. So if I'm sure, or if you're sure that 150 is not the correct answer, you may cross that out and put a check or encircle 147, which means that that's the correct answer. Okay, that's my personal strategy in IELTS. So it will take you at least, say, 3 to 4 hours by road. As you can see, you will likely at first think that the answer is 150 miles, but it's actually 147 miles. Okay, we have more examples here. Example 2, 3, and 4. Let's read example 2. So here the woman is arranging to book a hire car to make the journey when she arrives. So the question is date of booking. So and then a line after that. So when I see that question, I'm expecting to hear, I'm going to look out for dates, months and specific dates, or maybe days. Okay, I will have to take note of everything. So the man says, okay, I just have to fill out this form for you. So what date do you want to book this for? So take note that the man mentions date and book for. So the woman says the 16th of October. So I'll take note of that. And then she goes on to say, oh no, sorry, that's my departure date. I arrive on the 17th. So book it for then, please. All right, so I also take note of the 17th. Again, you will likely at first think that the answer is the 16th and start to write that down, but she corrects her mistake and confirms that the date she needs the car for is the 17th. Okay, so I would leave examples 3 and 4 for you to read during your free time, all right? So here are a few tips for distractors. The most important tip is really just to make sure that you are aware of correction distractors, which you are now. So I'm expecting for you guys to have better scores next time. All right. Now that you're aware of distractors, they also emphasize the importance of listening very carefully. Here are some tips. Be aware of possible distractors, particularly in part 1, where they are common. Don't assume the first thing you hear as the answer is the actual answer. Listen carefully to what comes after that. Words such as no and sorry tell you that there may be another answer coming up to correct the first. Take a look at the examples above. You'll see those words appear in several of the examples after the first incorrect answer. Distractors often involve some kind of number, so take particular care when you hear numbers, though it is not always numbers, as we saw in example 3. Always listen very carefully. So it's not only numbers. In example 3, it's I think this is a location. It's in the library. Okay, not the computer lab, but in the library. Okay. Questions about distractors? Okay, now another thing that this lesson emphasizes is on listening, IELTS listening map labeling. So this type is common in section 2 of the test, though you may get a map in any of the sections. In section 2 of the IELTS listening test, you hear one person speaking. It is quite common for the map to be related to some kind of tour. The aim is labeling the map, and if choose map is to connect the information that you hear in the listening to the gaps in the map. In some maps, you are given a list of words and you have to choose the correct word to fit in the map. Other times, you will just be given some gaps and you need to listen and choose the right words from the listening. So take note, there are 2 types of listening map labeling. The first one is with options and the second one is without options, without a list of words. So which one, what's the strategy for both or for each? I would say that, well, don't try to look at the list of words yet or don't think about the answers yet. Just list down whatever it is that you hear while listening or while the audio is being played. On the next page, you will see there a sample map, okay, and this has no list of words. So you will see that the map is numbered. What's the number? So there are 3 gaps, or, yeah, numbers 15, 16, and 17. So the movement, you are, there's a label in the middle tower, and then it says there, you are here. Okay, you are there. But because the first number is 15, that's in the southeast, okay, then you have to move your eyes to southeast, going clockwise to number 16 and clockwise to number 17. All right? Okay. Now, let's take a look at some tips for map labeling. So the first one is read the instructions carefully. This is so you know what you need to do and the maximum number of words and or numbers you can use. In this case, it is no more than 2 words. Number 2, know the vocabulary of location. So make sure that you know your compass directions, north, east, south, west. Also, I would recommend that you strengthen your prepositions and adverbs of location or adverbs of place, like prepositions like behind, to the next is, following this, at the end of the hall, okay, located in the center are or is, and so on. Number 3, identify where the number starts and finish. Okay, so we have done this. As you can see from the example, the first one, 15, starts at the bottom, not at the top. The numbers 15, 16, and 17 will follow the order of the listening. So you will hear them in order. Number 4, which is very important, okay, you have to apply active listening here because you need to understand the context. What are you listening for? Listen carefully at the beginning as the speaker will give you the context, like where you are, for example. Are you in a park? Are you in a building? Are you in a campus? And so on, which will help you to follow the talk. Also, look over the map. This will help you identify exactly what you are labeling. Note the things that are already labeled to get a feel for where things are. Okay, so you have to read the words in the map. All right, so you see there words like station, what's that? Pond, benches, lake, island, and then you have below Olympic site, you will see stadium, swimming pool, indoor arena, station. Okay. Number 5, predict the answers. As with all the listening tests, it helps to predict what the answer may be. Look at the gaps and see if you can guess what you are labeling. Is it a room, a building, a sports facility, a street, etc. Number 6, pay particular attention to things close by. For example, number 15 is by the station. So it is quite likely, though not definite, that this will be mentioned just before number 15. Number 7, pay attention to any other clues in the map. For example, you're given a compass icon in the corner telling you where north, south, east, and west are. This means it is likely that these phrases will be used to direct you. So listen out for them. You are also given your location in the tower. So it's actually always like that. It always begins with where you are. And then if there are any examples, make sure to mark the examples as well, or the example as well. Number 8, look at 2 questions at once. This is something you should always do in the listening test. If you hear the answer to question 16, you will know you missed 15. Forget about this and move on. If you're only looking at 15, you could miss both and get lost. Okay, so I'm thinking that this could have happened to you during the assessment. Now here are a few common language of location. Okay, so they're common, but you may not hear all of them, not necessarily all of them in one test. So we have examples like at the top, at the bottom, on the left, on the right, left-hand side, right-hand side, south, north, north, east, west, southeast, southwest, to the north, to the south, opposite, in front of, behind, in the middle, in the center, above, below, inside, outside, just beyond, a little beyond, just past, next to, alongside, adjoining, and so on. Yes? Question?
Sorry, hi everyone. Sorry, I had an emergency I have to attend to. I'm not back.
All right. Okay. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Oh,
Okay.
you were gone? We are
Yes,
now
I had an emergency.
listening tips.
Yes, I was there when tips. Okay, but there's no tips on this. Oh, you have opened a different file. We're at
Ruben, you get the
listening
recording after
method.
the class.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's read the listening tips. Encia, can you begin, please? Number 1. Are you guys here? Who's here?
Jones is here.
Encia, are you here?
I think NCA is not here.
Okay. So Encia is here. All right. Listening tips number 1, please. You don't have to read everything. Just read the first few lines.
Listening tips. Hello.
Yes, hello. kindly read listening tips number 1.
Uh, okay, yes.
Mm. So do you guys study on your own when you miss the class?
Yes, we do.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we
I
do.
hope so. I hope so. Not everybody has sent their essays. Jones, I received yours. I'll be checking your essay in a little while, okay? I'm not yet done with it.
Okay.
All right. But I
Yes,
like
I'll finish
you're
writing mine. It's
improving.
left for me to type it.
All right, thank you so much.
Rubin.
Yeah.
So you're here. Why are you guys laughing?
No, it's not.
You're a funny group, you know that?
Why?
Yeah, sure. It's fun to be learning with,
You're funny.
jokes and others. It's better course.
Sometimes I feel
I
like you're
think
laughing at me. Are you?
Really?
no, 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 no,
No,
no,
no,
no,
no, no.
not at all.
But if you are, that's okay, because I'll be
No,
laughing at
never.
you myself. All right. I don't really mind.
Yes,
I'm used to
because
it already.
mostly we have we observe you laughing most times. I don't know, but it's normal to laugh. So
All right.
yeah.
So guys, make sure that you study on your own because Ian is already following up on you. They want they want an update on your performance. So we have to finish all lectures as soon as possible. And then after that, after all the
Okay.
lectures, I'll be giving you a post test. That's how we know if you're ready to take the test or not. That's also how I will know what advice I will give you when it comes to practice. Do you need to follow, let's say, do you need to work on writing? So if that's the case, I will ask you to write and send me your essays. You don't, after the lectures, we don't really need to have classes anymore. It's going to be more of a consultation. But what I do with
Okay.
my students, with my other students, what I do is after the lectures, I ask them to answer according to their answer as many tests as possible. But before we move on to the next reading test, we will have to discuss reading test first. In other words, we rationalize and discuss, especially the questions that they find difficult. So that's what we do. And then for writing, I ask them to send essays, both for task 1 and task 2. And then I do essay correction in detail. So that is actually, it's tedious on my side, for my side here. It's tedious because it takes a lot of time and effort on my part to correct essays because I need to assign you the most accurate grade as possible so that we will know if you can get 6.5 or not yet. All right. I'm happy to inform you that Pamela is already getting a 6.75 in essay 2. So we have to work on her task 1.
Oh wow,
So I
wow,
hope that
wow, wow, wow.
you
That's
guys,
great.
you are actually better writers than her. That's the truth. Because her difficulty is not only in grammar, but little by little we are able to improve her, as well as with the clarity of her sentences. But in listening, she's
Okay.
getting 34, 32, 34. In reading, her lowest score is 28. Okay. So I hope you guys will also work as hard as Pamela because that's what she's doing right now.
Yes.
I have
Yes,
another
sure. We
student,
work very hard.
and I have another student. Her name Shizom. She got 7 in all, listening, reading, and speaking, but she only got 5.5 in writing. I was able to teach her only for 2 sessions, and then she already took the test. So when she was endorsed to me, she was already booked for the IELTS, so we didn't have any time to work on her writing skills. Okay, and then by the way, I also show if I'm not so sure about the grade that I assign, I ask for a second and a third opinion from other teachers as well as our head, the IELTS head. So this is just to make sure that my assessments are as accurate as possible or as close to your actual English proficiency. But you have to understand that the grade that you will get in the actual test is depending on your performance on that particular test. So you may get 7 in one test, but you may get 5 in another. All right? So that
Yeah.
means when you take the test, you have to give it your full blast, your best. You have to give the test your best. And never ever take the test when you are tired or lacking in sleep or maybe when you're sick. You have to get a day's rest
No.
the day before you take the IELTS, all right?
Okay.
Because the physiological will, the way you feel, your health on the day of the test might affect your performance during the test. All right. So,
Okay.
um, let's read. I'm looking for my file. Let us read the listening tip, please. Listening tip number 1. Who's here?
NCI was reading, so
Ruben,
we
would
should
you like to?
continue.
Oh, Encia. Okay. I don't hear from Encia. Encia, please, number 1. And then Ruben, and then Jones. And then back to Encia. No?
I can take the reading, but I don't know where you guys are. That's why I don't know. But John said after the yeah, I'm lost. You know
Page,
when I went to
Yeah, let me take
if not
let me take it.
17 or 18, listening manual.
listening manual.
Yeah. Page
Okay.
17.
The listening manuals are two. Is it the one 2015 one or 2016 one?
17, page 17 or 18. It depends on the page number of your file. I think 17,
Yes.
page 17.
Okay. Let me try.
Okay, Ruben, please,
17.
number 1.
Page 17. Hold on.
Of the listening manual.
Okay. Number 1. I IELTS listening tips. Number 1. Predict the topic. It helps you to listen if you know what kind of conversation is taking place, so you can picture it in your head. So look through each section in the time you are given and make sure you have an idea of who is speaking to who and what the context is. Should I continue?
Yes, please. Kindly
Okay.
read the first 4 questions.
Number
Listening
one.
here.
Yeah, number one.
Number
Predict
2.
the topic. Number two. Okay. Number two. Predict the questions. You should also try and have an idea of what kind of information you are listening out for. For example, in the section 1, you can often have to listen for names, numbers, and addresses. Have a look at the question in the time you are given and work out what needs to go in a space. A name, number, and address. You are more likely to catch it than when the answer arises. Tip number 3. Use a minute to look through each section. You are given 30 seconds at the end of each section to check your answers. You are then told to turn over and look at the next section for 30 seconds. Although some IELTS listening tips will tell you to check what you have written, there is a little you can check for the previous session as you can't hear the listening again. So instead, turn straight to the next section. You will then have 1 minute instead of 30 seconds to look through the next section. This is time better spent. Tip number 4. Careful with questions order. Often you have a table to complete and sometimes a diagram or chart. The questions will not necessarily go from left to right. So check the progression carefully, otherwise you will get lost and confused. Tip number 5. Look at 2 questions at once. There are 2 reasons for doing this. Firstly, some questions may have the answer close together in one sentence, so you could miss one if only look at one question at a time. Also, it is possible that you will miss an answer. If you are just looking at one, you may not know that you missed it. If you are also looking at the next, you will see that it has moved. It has moved on. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much, Ruben.
Should I?
I hope you understand.
Okay.
I hope you understood
Yeah.
what you were reading. Okay,
Yes,
Jones
I
would like to
understood.
read the tips for us, number 6.
Okay. Tip 6. Move on if you miss an answer. If you do realize you have missed an answer, quickly forget about it and concentrate on the next ones. There is nothing you can do, and you can also guess when you transfer your answers to the answer sheet at the end. The the same applies if you realize you missed 2 or 3 answers. Don't panic and just move on, as there is nothing you can do. A few questions missed may not necessarily affect your band score. Tip 7. Watch others if you are completely lost. If you are completely lost where you are, then watch when the other candidates turn over their answer papers. You will know then that you are back in the right place. Tip 8. Look out for paraphrasing. Remember that what you hear will most likely not be exactly the same is written on the exam paper, as that would be too easy. The question and the question stems use such things as synonyms, so you must listen carefully for this. 9. Ignore words you don't know. Don't worry or panic if you hear a word that you don't know. It may not be necessary to know it anyway, or you can take a guess.
Okay.
Tip 10. Underline keywords. When you look through the questions first, particularly in the more difficult parts 3 and 4, underline keywords such as names, places, and dates in the question stems to help you hear the answer. Remember though, As explained above, synonyms are often used. Often used,
Thank you
sorry.
so much, Jones. Thank you. All
Welcome.
right. Encia, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Number 11, please. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Take care with the spelling and grammar. Your answer will be marked wrong if it is spelled incorrectly or the grammar does not fit. So when you transfer your answers at the end, double check these. The sentence on the exam paper may help you with the grammar. Does it grammatically does it fit grammatically? Should it be a verb, noun, or adjective? Use British or American spelling. The number 12. He said you should use British or American spelling. This is what it says on the official IELTS website. IELTS recognizes both British and American English in terms of spelling, grammar, and choice of words. So you can use either in your answers. 13. Don't worry about what you write on the exam sheet. In practice tests, it is common to see students rubbing or crossing things out on the exam paper. Remember that nobody sees or marks that you write here. What you write here. Don't waste time getting the spelling correct or anything else. If you do this, you get lost. You need to be listening. So just write down what you hear, then move on. When you transfer the answers at the end of the answer sheet, you can make sure you have the correct spelling. So the number 14, read the instructions. An alert listening tip that is an important tip for any part of the test is to always read the instructions carefully. They will tell you how many words to use. If it asks for no more than two words and use three, it will be wrong. And
Okay.
you must only put in the words asked for. For example, if there is a gap of at PM and you write at 5 p.m. on the answer sheet, it will be wrong. You should be, you should only write what is missing. That is 5.
Okay. Did you understand that? At blank
Yes.
PM. So if PM is already in the questionnaire, you don't have to write it anymore
If you write
because
5,
what will
yes.
happen is if you fill in the gap with 5 p.m., it will read as 5 p.m. PM, which is wrong. All right? Okay. So what you transfer onto your answer sheet is only what's on the blank. All right? And number 15, please, Encia.
Use upper or lower case letters. A question
Okay,
often
10.
asks A
All
question
right, stop
often asked
there.
is whether you can. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to emphasize this. Please write in all capital letters for listening and reading only. That will be our strategy. Although you may write in small letters, but I want you, being my student, to write in all caps. Okay? Why? Because this is for purposes of proper nouns, so that they're automatically capitalized. I have students who have gotten the correct answer, but because they did not capitalize, then of course the answer is marked wrong. Okay. So you're done. 16. Ruben again, please. Is Ruben here? Okay, I'm going to read them. Number 16, get used to the British accent. A good IELTS listening tip is to be prepared to hear all accents as you may hear Australian, American, Canadian, New Zealand, and a mix of European countries. Sometimes I also hear Indian accents or, yeah, non-native speaker accents, but these accents are neutral, so that's fine in the IELTS, all right? However, Although there are a mix of accents in the test, the majority tend to be British. So make sure you are used to the British accent. May I know, are you guys used to the British accent?
Yeah, we are
NCR,
used to the British accent because
you
they are our
were?
colonial masters.
Because what? I'm sorry?
Because they are our colonial masters, so we speak more British accent than American.
Okay, that's good. All right. Number 17, practice the pronunciation of letter and numbers. Often, words are spelled out in the test by a speaker and numbers are read out. So make sure you can recognize how different letters sound in different accents, not just words. All right? Number 18, careful with what you write down. Speakers in the test will often give an answer, but then correct themselves. So the first answer that looks right may actually be wrong. Excuse me. Ah. Number 19, don't leave answers blank. You will not get penalized for writing the wrong answers, as opposed to nothing if you're not sure what it is. So guess if that is possible. Okay, so if you're not sure of the answer or you have not taken notes, make an educated guess. If that's better than not writing anything at all, since the IELTS test is not a right minus wrong test anyway. Number 20, transfer your answers to the answer sheet carefully. If you put correct answers in the wrong place on the answer sheet, it will be marked wrong. One of you did this during the assessment. He placed the answer in the wrong number. He could have gotten it correct, but because it was placed on the wrong number, then of course I marked it wrong. So don't forget to, number 21, check your answers and check on the numbering. Make sure you recheck your spelling and grammar when you transfer your answers at the end. 22, listen very carefully. Listen very carefully throughout the test. Zone in and focus. Don't be distracted by anything around you and don't panic. 23, this is what I will ask you to do now is practice listening. Okay, 24, if you're not used to listening lectures, I would, of course, advise you to listen to lectures, not just Cambridge materials or IELTS materials, but try to listen to non-IELTS materials as well. I and my colleagues, my co-teachers believe that students who are preparing for the IELTS should also develop the fondness for reading and listening. Okay, I myself, as a teacher, I also train myself every day. So I listen to the news every day. Well, maybe not every day, but regularly at least. So if I'm not listening to any show in English or watching, then I'm reading something. So try to do that yourself because remember, IELTS is a test of English proficiency. And IELTS does measure how good your English is in all areas. And then finally, learn to listen and write together. Okay, just like when you are, for instance, listening to a lecture and then you have a test after. Okay, listen attentively and actively and take down notes accurately and effectively. So those are the tips coming from, these are actually examiner approved tips from both IBP and British Council. So I hope you learned something, or maybe if not something, a lot from this lecture. So I'd like to know before I let you go, do you have any questions, guys?
Yes, I have one question. There was one of the point talking about if you miss a line, look at others. I've not been to the writing area before. Maybe Insia can give us more detail on this. But I was thinking that everybody is going to be in a cubicle, or like how this box cubicle that they do when you are at the browsing center. You see, everybody have a small cubicle that is for you. You can't see what is going on the other side. I thought it's going to be like that. But if it's going to be something general that you can see your friend and others, or you can see your colleagues writing the paper at the same time, then I think that will, because I've read this very far before, and that very place I didn't understand it. So looking at others, if they flip over, I don't know. Is it a general hall that you can see others, or you
Mm.
can see each other? Yeah.
In the computer delivered test, you have your own cubicle. But if you're taking the paper-based test, you'll be taking the test, the listening test, together with other candidates in a big room. Other,
Oh, okay, okay,
there are pros and cons to this. Some people
okay.
say that computer delivered is better in listening because you can focus more. The difficulty with the paper-based listening test is that there might be distractors like people sneezing or people coughing while the listening test is ongoing. So you might get
Yeah.
distracted. That happened to me once. Somebody at my back sneezed and I got lost. Yeah, that happened to me. But I trained myself. I trained myself to take the listening test even with noise around me. So that actually helped me to become a better listener. So you might want to try that. So sometimes I take the listening test with the TV on, or well, not so loud though, or maybe with my kids playing around, so I get used to the distractions around me. And my scores are pretty okay. I usually get 8 or higher. Sometimes I get 9, but usually I get 1 to 3 mistakes. So you might want. My next homework for you guys is to answer. Remember the IELTS assessment I gave you, Cambridge
Yeah.
10 Test 1.
Yeah.
I want you to answer
Yeah.
that again, all right? And then check your own work. And then you have to report to me your scores and also answer test 2 of the same book. Cambridge
Okay.
10, test 1, and test
Okay.
2. And report your scores to me. All right. And when is the deadline?
Okay.
Well, there's really no deadline, but I would prefer tomorrow. Okay. So that
Okay.
Okay.
before we move on to reading, tomorrow we'll have the reading test. Oh, sorry, reading lecture.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if there are other questions, please take note of them and we'll discuss them tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. You have a great day ahead. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Anna.